Today I'm here with Marzia Borghi Rogers from Tuscany Unplugged. And she does some really cool things in the Tuscany area and actually maybe even broader areas of Italy. So we're going to talk with her about what she does, how accessible things are. To start with, you want to give us a little bit about your background, about how you got started in doing accessible travel?
Yes, hi. Hi to everybody. Nice to be here with you. And yes, I started to do as a guide and as a driver with an accessible van my private tour, accessible tour in 2011. And everything started because I had a person from a cruise, and I didn't know that it was a person on a wheelchair. And that's how I really started. But I was able to help him during the day. And, Tuscany is very hilly kind of regions of Italy. And sometimes it's not very easy for a person on a wheelchair, especially if you have a manual wheelchair. So I remember that I've been pushing the chair all day my first time, but it was an exciting, a very good experience. And the person enjoyed very much. And after that day, he actually spread the word with his little community in Italy, and he actually sent me quite a few people in the future months to have tour with me. Most of them were actually Americans, so that's how I start to work with accessible tours, everything like that. And every time I try to have more knowledge about accessible itineraries, accessible hotels, restaurants, and places where people on a wheelchair could enjoy and feel safe.
Very nice. So I'm going to put up the picture. You said this is where you are right now.
Yes, after this long pandemic period, I decided to do a winter season before to start the tourism in March or next April. So I decided to come here to work for the winter and also to do some walks in the Dolomites, even if there is lots of snow and it's very cold at the moment. It's a very beautiful area of Italy. It's an area very north in the Italian Alps, very close to Austria, where there is a very different kind of community. Italy is a small country, but the 20 regions of Italy show the big difference inside the Italian community.
So let me ask you. So right now, while you're talking at Dolomites, how's the accessibility in the Dolomites? If somebody was in a
The
wheelchair,
Dolomites, the Dolomites are accessible because here viability, accessibility is very important. It's a very, I would say, progressive area of Italy and also very rich. As you see, it's full of beautiful mountains, and you think that could not be accessible because it's a place made for skiers, for hikers during the summer, even climbers. Some of the most important climbers in the world come here to practice. But in fact, the beautiful hotel, the beautiful itinerary are really accessible for wheelchair. And
okay.
there are so many beautiful little towns and villages that makes everything really enjoyable.
Well, very good. So let's talk about somebody that's going to fly in to do a tour with you, and you provided a picture of your van. So let's talk about it. Let's say that I've booked a tour with you, and we're going to tour some places in Tuscany. So I fly into which are the airports I would fly into? Let's start with that.
Good. Okay, Tuscany has got two main airports, which are Pisa. Pisa, very famous for the Leaning Tower, is also one of the most requested town, and Florence. Pisa Airport is actually much bigger airport than Florence, but also Florence have international flight. So both of the airports are okay, depends on people plans and traveling. And the van that you can see from a side has a taxi license that is called, and it's a proper public license. And of course, I have a public driver license, which allow me to enter inside restricted areas of town and also airport or port. And of course, I will be able to come quite close to pick up people on a chair. And as you see also from the picture, this is a ramp, a manual ramp, but is a very strong ramp, allow me to put on the van any kind of wheelchair, scooter, manual wheelchair. So it's really very handy.
So once you pick me up at the airport, what do we do next?
Sure. Usually we agree before, if you contact me, I describe something, that we can do. For instance, the picture you see now, it's a beautiful boulevard that is nearby the coast of Tuscany. Tuscany has got a huge amount of place that can be visited by accessible people. If you love the city, art in Tuscany, it's very important. I think the Florence, which is the capital town of all the Tuscany town, Tuscany has got 10 main towns. They are not big cities, they are all quite small and easy to do walking tours with a wheelchair. So Florence, for instance, is probably the most requested. Florence is also quite big, so sometime in a day we just do a walking tour to have a general overview of the city. And also with the van, I will drive you to the hills around Florence to have the view of the town, which is very beautiful. I will be able to enter again in the restricted area of every town. If people sometimes are tired or if we have to go something a bit distant, I will be able to drive you or to take you almost everywhere. There is something I would like to say about accessible tours. Something I always ask my guests, people contact me, to bring their own personal disability badge that I can put on the screen, on the window of the van, because that allows me to park inside restricted areas, which otherwise I won't be able to do. I can enter, I can drive into, pick up people, but not parking. So if we want to visit some places, please, I recommend to bring your personal disability, how we say, badge. Huh?
Yeah, in the US, you'd say their placard, but the thing that says, hey, handicap
Yes,
parking. Yeah.
doesn't matter if you are from the States, from Japan, from Canada, from Italy, or wherever.
Okay. So, based on what you said right now about Tuscany being hilly, would you recommend that if they normally used a manual wheelchair, would you recommend that maybe they rent a power chair when they're in Tuscany because it would make easier, so you're not pushing their wheelchair up the hill, they're not pushing their wheelchair up their hill, their family members not having to push the wheelchair up the hill? Would that be a smart decision?
Okay, so there are actually two options that I developed during these years of experience. One, yes, I can actually help. People can ask me, and maybe I can put you in contact and rent maybe a little scooter if people can. Uh, Second option, I actually have a person that could be called a pusher and that I can have with me in the van during the day. Then places like Florence or Pisa or Lucca, which are three beautiful towns in Tuscany, you don't need that because they are quite flat, they're easy. But beautiful towns like Siena, medieval small town like San Gimignano, Volterra, or other a very famous place to visit, there are often on top of the hill that could be more difficult. That's places where maybe we need a pusher, or if people want, I can rent for them a scooter. Yes, that will be the best solution. Otherwise, will be pretty tough.
Okay, so a couple of questions that come to mind. I've flown in, I got there. Probably I've traveled for several hours. If I'm coming from the States, it might be a 4 hour or 6 or 7 hour flight. So probably my first day is do some catching up on my rest and adjust to time zones. So if I fly into Pisa, you have an accessible hotel in Pisa that would work as a good
Sure.
place to stay.
Yes, of course. Every town, and sometimes even in lovely place in the countryside, there are real accessible hotel. And usually, when I say accessible places, I know I've been there. I know that people can really go around their room or their bathroom easily. Otherwise, I don't consider them really accessible. So, yes, relax on the first day when you arrive with the time difference and everything, the jet lag and everything, so you can relax. Also, I often recommend do not put too many destinations on the same day of a tour, because I know very well that especially accessible tours often are a bit slower. So we cannot really run from one place to the other, even with the van. And because Tuscany is a big region, sometimes people want to see 2 or 3 towns in a day, which are maybe a couple of hours distance one to each other. So they will be done in a rush, they won't be enjoyable. So usually I do not put too many itineraries together on the same day. It just depends what people really wish to see, want to see. Also, the most important museums are accessible. So that is another thing. You cannot miss a little bit of art when you come to Italy or Tuscany, because Florence has been considered one of the most prestigious places for art in the world.
So now you mentioned both Florence and Pisa. Are they close to each other reasonably? So let's say I fly into Pisa. We'll go back to plan out this tour. I fly into Pisa and I spend the afternoon and the evening, or let's say the afternoon, I get a nap, and then I'm in a nice hotel. We got to do some food. So
Yes.
how is accessibility for restaurants and restaurants with accessible restrooms?
Sure, sure. It's not difficult to find accessible restaurants in Italy, especially because they are protected by the law. If you open in the last maybe 15, 20 years, most of restaurants now are accessible and have accessible bathroom. Of course, not 100%. So, of course, I know very good restaurants which are accessible. And usually I mention, or in agreement with the guest, I also book the restaurant for them. That is not really a problem in Tuscany and in many parts of Italy. But we have to know, sometimes people say, yes, our restaurant is accessible because you can enter easy, but maybe the bathroom, it's not accessible. So when I say accessible, means that a wheelchair person can go easily to eat on a table, but also using all the services.
Yeah, because you have people that tell me they do accessible stuff, and then I go and see, and I'm like, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
I wound up. I'll tell a story on myself just real quickly. I wound up with my wife on a sailboat, and I talked to them about it, and we never discussed the toilet facilities, and the toilet facilities were down a ladder. Now my wife has some mobility, and she could get down in there, but then the toilet was about this high off the floor, and the floor was uneven, and so that was a challenge. And then trying to get back up and out was a challenge. And again, it's just one of those things that when you talk to people, if they don't deal with accessibility all the time, they don't think about things like that. So that's why I asked the question. So now we've had dinner. Is there something we might do in the evening in Pisa?
Yes, you can have both lunch or dinner, or just in something to remember. Usually in Italy, we eat a little bit later than maybe in the States. And in towns, you can find restaurants, they open around 7, 7:30, sometimes 8 o'clock in the evening. So it's a little bit different from maybe the States, where I know you usually eat a bit earlier. And also depends where you go in Italy, because if you go to the south, they even eat later than in the center or in the north. But usually it's not a problem. When people stay for a few days, they get used. Lunch usually is a restaurant and lunch are usually open from midday to 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And usually the hotel, which are accessible, that I suggest to people, they always have a continental breakfast, which means a fully breakfast with lots of choices. So they're really international. And then I remember you asked me the distance between Pisa and Florence. Pisa, it's very close to the sea and also close to the port of Livorno, which is very easy also for the cruise tour. Together with Lucca, which is another lovely town. Pisa is about 80 kilometers from Florence, But because there is lots of traffic entering Florence, lots of highways, usually we need 1.5 hours to reach the center of the town, the historic town. But it's something we can do easily, even from a cruise on a day. No problem. Of course, we won't have time to see everything, but you can have a good overview. You can have a good view of the town.
So for somebody on a cruise ship, and we'll just talk about that for a second. Somebody on a cruise ship, probably Pisa is the place they should focus their attention, just because they have a longer period of time. They don't have the long drive to Florence.
It's more relaxing also because it's a big university town, but it's a small town. It's about 100,000 people. It's a lovely town, very alive, culturally, arts and everything, not only for the Leaning Tower, even if it's a beautiful square. And we can do together with Luca. We can actually put two towns on the same tour, about 8 hours tour, in order to be back on the cruise for usually 5 p.m., which is plenty of time to enjoy, to have lunch, to visit places, or doing Florence from Livorno, because we can do about 8.5 hours tour, again, going back to the port for 5 o'clock in the afternoon and have a good day in Florence just to see the center of Florence. That is possible and enjoyable and accessible.
Okay.
And in Livorno, I will be able to go with the flyer with the person name just outside at the pier of the port, so people can see me very easily.
So now I'm going to go back to my land tour. So I'm in Pisa. How many days would I want to spend in Pisa? If, let's say I had a week, how would I split up my time? I fly into Pisa, so we're going to spend some time there. What else might we put in a 1-week tour?
Sure. About a week tour, you can see so many places in Tuscany, and even if people want to, even outside of Tuscany, because in a week I will go to see the beautiful Val d'Orcia, which is also a UNESCO heritage area in south of Tuscany, a very small medieval village, very beautiful area. The countryside is just something unbelievable. Of course, you will stay 1 or 2 days in Florence if you really love history and art and enjoy restaurants, and the town is very beautiful. You will go to Siena. Siena is another small medieval town not too far from Florence. Tuscany is very enjoyable for the wine. There is the Chianti area. The Chianti is a big region, very hilly, full of beautiful little town and lots of wineries. There are more than 850 wineries since the beginning of 1700. So you can find the family farmhouse that produce olive oil and wine, and you can find the international, professional, just to let you know, California style winery, but not California wines, of course, just Sangiovese grape. And for instance, the picture you see now is the old medieval town of Montalcino, one of the most prestigious towns in Italy and in Europe for wines. The Brunello often has been one of the 20 world top wines, and is also on top on the hill. So very hilly kind of trip, but people just sometimes enjoys to stop and have a good picture, enjoy the landscape because it's very beautiful. Food, agriculture, wine, olive oil, products is something that people must enjoy in Tuscany.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing time. I will have to come over and visit you. I looked at the photos. I think I have one more photo I hadn't put up. Tell me about the road. I think you started to earlier, and that is a beautiful road.
It is. It's actually 5 kilometers, about 3 miles of a hilly road that goes to the sea, to the Mediterranean Sea in Tuscany. 1/3 of Tuscany is a coast of the sea, and they're all cypress tree that they are between 50 and 200 years old. So it's 5 kilometers of this beautiful boulevard where even poets on the last century wrote a few poems about this place. And it reached a very tiny village called Borghi, that is also the home place of an aristocratic family that is one of the oldest Tuscany families called della Gherardesca. This is also an area for wines. It's an area for beautiful wines, especially for people that love grapes like Cabernet, Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, Sangiovese again, which is typical of Tuscany territory. Relaxing, not stressful.
I love what you said about taking your time. I am a fan of being able to take time to really immerse yourself a little bit in what you're seeing and not having to rush. I have been on tours where it's 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. More often, I read descriptions of tours. If it's beautiful, I want to be able to stay. One of the things, obviously, about working with you is it's because it is a private tour. People can get it customized. And if you want to change the tour, let's say that somebody
Yes.
fell in love with Pisa and wanted to stay and change the days up a little bit, they could stay in Pisa a little bit longer. You have to shuffle some hotels maybe, or if they wanted to spend some time in the country, you could arrange that. So that is such an amazing option. I have really enjoyed my conversation with you, Marzia. I
Thank you.
will put the links to your information in the description of the video so that people can reach out and get in touch with you. Thanks for joining me today.
It was a pleasure, and you will be really welcome. All of you, you will be really welcome and enjoy. And every tour will be quite flexible in order that people can enjoy a little bit the quality of the day that they spend. So thank you very much also.